when we're out on hikes and stuff, it was definitely Hugo. I think with things like sheep, is the big thing that people get concerned about, especially with hiking. So Hugo just never really bothered with sheep. He found them interesting to look at, but because he was so busy doing his own thing and in his own little world, he would just kind of like observe them and then and not really engage. Whereas Spencer, we did have one incident actually in the Pentlands when he was still quite young, where he saw sheep and went and started to chase. He has a really strong prey drive. And that was a really shocking moment for me because I hadn't experienced that with Hugo. And I had done a lot of recall training, but it just wasn't the right type for Spencer. And I remember thinking, like, if the farmer sees Spencer right now, he 100% is in his rights to shoot him. And that's my fault because I hadn't done the right training with him. So with Spencer, it was, yeah, a lot of then training to get the recall down. So kind of did impulse control training where I'd get him to sit at my feet and throw a ball, and he'd have to sit and wait until I would release him to go get the ball. And that I found made a huge, huge difference, just him learning to control that initial chase impulse. And then also like really high value treats, because, yeah, he's food, it trumps all for him.
Do you know, I only found this out recently when I was looking into it, that in the early 20th century, they had land spaniels and then water spaniels. And the land spaniels, if they were in a litter, under 20, any dog under the 25 pounds would be used to hunt woodcock. And then they were called like, cocking dogs, which is where they get
Oh,
the name cocker spaniel. And
okay.
then the ones that were over 25 pounds, they would be used to flush prey or spring prey. And that's what we were called Springer spaniels. Yeah.
Okay.
And since then, the two breeds have just completely diverged.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. With ours, I basically have just done loads of gun dog training with it because it's just
Yeah.
very set and they're very much like eyes on you and have to listen and everything. But I
Yeah.
just you see them around quite a lot, and they're just like, they never walk in a straight line. So the poor owner's got like 2 shopping bags and then a cocker just like zigzagging on the pavement. And I'm like, oh yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
You sort of came to public acclaim when you started Monroe bagging with the 2 dogs. How did that journey come about?
It was all kind of for my 25th birthday. I wanted to do something. I think it was like quarter life, want to do something with it. And I thought, I live in Scotland, let's climb Ben Nevis. And just kept seeing the word Munro everywhere and had absolutely no idea what it meant. And then when I got back down from Ben Nevis, kind of Googled what a Munro was just to try and understand why this word kept popping up. And saw that there was this whole list of Munros to do in Scotland. I found out that there was one that was like, I was staying in Comrie Croft, this campsite. There was one that was like 10 minutes away. So I was like, great, I'll go and do that. And that was kind of the start of it. And I started off at a relatively, I mean, still quick by most people's standards pace. I did like 50 in the first 6 months, and then 20 in the next 6 months. And then I kind of got to the June of 2022, and something clicked in me, and that was it. And between June then and June of the following year, I did 212 in the space of a year, just powering through them. So it came almost by chance. It was just that I wanted to do this one thing to mark my 25th.
How many of the 280 Monroes did the dogs do?
They did 269, so they didn't do the Kulins and they didn't do Anakiga, or I'm pronouncing it wrong, I know, but I'm not going to try and pronounce it wrong. But yeah, so there was 13 that they didn't do.
Well, do you take, when you're out with them, do you take like snacks and everything to keep them fueled up as they go? Because there'd be some long days, I suspect.
Yeah, so I normally take bags of treats with us, like kind of meaty sausages or stuff like that for them. And then they just have water. There's often like water on the routes, or if I've checked the route before and there isn't sufficient water, then I'll carry extra water for them. And then if we're going long enough to need to camp and stay overnight somewhere, then I'll be carrying their food in my pack anyway.
You said camp overnight. You have some of the best videos of you either in a hammock or in the tent. How do you, because Cocker Spaniels just love to be right in your face and lots of hugs. How do do you just not get the whole inside of your tent really muddy?
I think I don't know actually. We've done pretty well with the tent. Most of the times, I mean, I try and pick days that aren't wet and soggy and boggy. So, um, yeah, the conditions definitely help. But there have been times they've been a bit minging. I do carry like a jacket for them overnight, so that helps kind of keep some of the mud in. But there have been a few times where it's not actually the mud that's necessarily the problem. It's if humans go to the toilet outside and they don't pack it away properly, the dogs will find it. And there's been a few times where they've come into the tent and I'm like, get out.
No.
That's much worse than mud.
It is. Did I see that you have like dog sleeping bags for them? Specific dog
Yes.
sleeping bags?
Yeah, there's they've got some from Nonstop. They're just like mini sleeping bags with like a waterproof bottom, and so they pack away really small, but it's great for when we're in the tent that they can tuck in, and especially if it's like a really cold camp, they kind of huddle in together and then they get zipped in and they've got their jackets on, they've got the sleeping bag, and they're warmer than I am with my stuff. So they stay cozy.
We were laughing earlier that Cock Spaniels never walk in a straight line. How do you balance that tendency that they have, especially on some of the Munros with like big drops and cliffs?
It took a lot actually, and I think the more work came from me in terms of managing my own like spikes of fear, because they grew up climbing like Arthur's Seat, which is just like behind where we live, pretty much every day. So although it's not Munro level or scrambling grade, there are a few sections that are kind of tricky. So from day one, they've had good mobility and like maneuvering over tricky ground. But yeah, the first good chunk of Munros I was freaking out a lot of the time, and I'd have them on like bungee leads and waist leads and stuff. But I found that it became almost like a hindrance to them and me. I'd be trying to climb something and they would jump and pull, and that would pull me off balance, and then they would recoil back, and so they would then risk getting hurt. So I did just almost have to bite the bullet and kind of test them out on some easier ones off lead, and I could then trust that they knew how to handle themselves. They would kind of gingerly approach an edge, glance over, see like, nope, can't go that way, and then they'd come back again. And then also knowing that if I was to call them, they would come back to me. If I did see something up ahead, I knew that they would come back to me. But it was definitely, I had to trust that in them because they are really capable dogs.
Yeah, I call it when we go walking around here, it's obviously very snowy and icy. And I say to Emily that Heston has 4-wheel drive just because she can just like fly around things. She's like slow, she's got the claws, it's just amazing. And we're like slipping and sliding down a hill. And she's just like, no.
They make it look so easy, and you're like, I'm like dying here. Meanwhile, they're just trotting along, like, oh, come on, like extra laps and everything.
What's been the biggest day that they've done in terms of kilometers or miles?
I don't know. We did one day that was to get to number 100, where I kind of combined the Fanics. And I think that day was 42 kilometers.
Wow.
Remember.
So they did a mountain marathon then?
Yeah, we did. That was like 7 or 8 Munros, or 9, I can't remember, 9 maybe in a day. That was a really long day. That was like 10 and a half hours of solid hiking because I don't stop to eat or anything. I just like eat as we walk. So that was a really big day. Then we also did, to get to do Fisherfield, you kind of hike, pick up your tent and then come back again. So that was although we stopped overnight, that was a really long one as well.